Okay, so you come home from school. You open your maths textbook. You are determined. This is the day you'll finish your maths homework. You read the title of the page. Then suddenly, you remember that you've been too busy sleeping in class and you can't even figure out what language this is written in. Oh, what's this? Not a distraction at all. So you took the advice, and this is what you found.
Quadratics. What are they? A quadratic is defined as when the highest power of x is 2, and because this is called a quadratic equation, the quadratic must be followed by an equal sign. The general form of a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. You will need this later on. Now that we know what a quadratic equation is, let us learn how to solve for x. Today we will show you two different methods in solving for x. These two methods are called completing the square and using the quadratic formula. Let's start with completing the square. Here is an example to show you how. X squared plus 4x minus 12 equals 0. First you look at your middle term. To complete the square you half it and square it. Simple. You add this to your equation, placing it in between the b and c values. What you add you must subtract to keep the equation the same. You may notice that the first three terms are a perfect square. If you didn't know, now you know. So let's factorize the perfect square. Let's also simplify the last two terms as well. Now you are left with a difference of two squares. Guess what we do with that? Yes, factorize. Once we have factorized, we then simplify each set of brackets and then solve for x, by leaving x on one side. By the way, quadratics have up to two answers. Now that you know how to complete the square, let's explore a new method, the quadratic formula. This is the quadratic formula. X equals minus b plus or minus root b squared minus 4ac all on 2a. I know it looks like a monster, but if you stick around, you'll find out that it is just a little puppy. So how do you use the quadratic formula? Remember the general form of a quadratic equation? ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Basically what you do is you sub in the variables and then you solve for x. Easy. Example, x squared plus 3x minus 4 equals 0. Now that you know how to solve for x by completing the square and using the quadratic formula, you are now able to do your maths homework with ease. However, do note that there are some cases where you cannot solve for x. This occurs when a negative integer is inside a square root. In this case, simply write no solution as your answer. Example, x squared plus 2x plus 3 equals 0. See? Solving quadratic equations isn't that hard. Now that you're an expert in solving quadratic equations, you should better get to work with your maths homework. But before you go, the methods you were just taught are ways how we solve quadratic equations. But how do ghosts solve quadratic equations? By completing the square.